Welcome to the holidays. It is December. It is the time where most people start talking about family members and communication, and not all communication is good, and sometimes we struggle through it. I'm going to put my 2 cents in my category. I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to talk about intuition and skeptics. So you might be related to a skeptic. You might be in a relationship with a skeptic. You might interact with skeptics, in your work if you're out there working as an intuitive. And I think today is a great day to talk about it. I want to talk about what skepticism really is, because I feel like if I do my job well enough today explaining that, you'll walk away from this episode with a different perspective on skepticism that is going to lighten the whole process of interacting with skeptics. I'm saying that like they're bad. Spoiler alert, they're not, but I'll explain. And for story time today, I have my favorite story of a skeptic, probably the most stubborn skeptic I've run into, and what I learned myself, because we're always learning. And then lastly, at the end of this episode, we're going to talk to Peter again. And he's given me a little bit of a heads up that he wants to talk about how to prepare you for 2026. So let's do this. Just a quick little blip here to talk about GCP. If you've been following me for a while, you're probably using GCP at this point, but this is something I talk about in the podcast quite frequently. And people always ask me, how do I learn how to do GCP? I have been teaching this practice for free for well over 15 years. This is what I would say. Ground, clear, protect, which is what it stands for, makes the lows in your life a little less low and the highs a whole lot higher. It is an energetic practice that, when done daily, is a game changer. Try it for 7 days and see what I'm talking about. And again, it's completely free. So look for my top 5 intuitive tools course, which is a free course. And the very first video in there is GCP. I'm going to settle on in here and say welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back. If you've been following the podcast / YouTube channel for a while, welcome back, my friend. If you're new, you've landed probably in the right place. If you're spiritually awakening, opening your intuition, honing your intuition, this entire channel is about just that. So it's about me and you sitting here chatting about concepts, tools, ideas, etc. Now, today, we're going to talk about skeptics. That sounded bad. We're going to talk about skeptics. No, we're going to talk about them in a very positive light. And I say that because I was a former skeptic myself. I want to talk a little bit about what it really means to be skeptic, how we, as somebody who's open spiritually, communicate with somebody that is skeptic. And also I want to talk about relationships and how skepticism can really affect in a relationship, and kind of what to do, right? So if you're sitting there being like, yeah, my husband doesn't believe it, I'll be like, well, here we go. But let's start in talking about skepticism in general. And let's flip the script on what this really is. So I was a skeptic. I was 32 years old. I have a math degree from college. I ran and opened businesses. 1 + 1 was 2. Everything else wasn't real. I wasn't like hardcore skeptic out there like shouting to the world to make sure everybody knew I was a skeptic, though that's a little annoying, but that's a completely different topic. But I didn't believe in any of this. And I thought psychics and intuitives and mediums, I thought they were all frauds. So for me, at 32, I was alone in my apartment. My grandmother had passed away just an hour before, and she showed up in my living room, 70% solid, scared the crap out of me. And it was life-changing. To be honest, my grief, I said, okay, if that was you and not a hallucination, because as a skeptic, my first go-to was, well, that was a hallucination from grief. If this was really you, Grandma, I'm going to need you to prove it. And that was actually my grief going, I kind of wonder if this is real, because if it is real, then she's not completely gone, as I had believed previously. Months into communicating with her, because intuition takes a while. For very few individuals, their intuitive channel will pop on and be 100%. But for the rest of us, right, it takes time to develop your intuition. And it's not even developing it like building it, it's understanding it and uncovering it. That's why we train. That's why we train to hone our intuition. So it took me a couple of months to get enough moments with her where the proof was so ridiculous that I couldn't deny it anymore. I was like, okay, I'm in. This is real. It is real. It's got to be real, because how could she have given me that message? And then it happened exactly like that moments later. So those things kept happening until I finally just said, you know what? I'm going to let go of my skepticism and I'm going to explore this path and see what it is today. And in the moment. And today, I'm sitting here with you talking about spirituality and everything that's in the in-between. And my life is so much better for it. And this is where we get into how we communicate with other skeptics, because we know the benefits to opening spiritually. I have taught tens of thousands of students at this point. Like, I've been teaching for like 18 years. And I cannot think of one moment where a student came to me and said, wow, my life is worse. I can't. I can give you so many moments where students came to me, maybe they finished the Sage Method course or something, and they came to me and said, I'm using my intuition on the daily now, and my entire life is better. Like, there's so many components of it, because when you uncover, your intuition and what's blocking it, and you release those blocks, naturally your life improves. So here we are, having experienced a spiritual awakening, albeit sometimes that's bumpy, right? But we see that the grass is greener on the other side, and that this was a good thing. And then what do? We want that for others. That's typically the majority of people out there who are trying to convince a skeptic that this is real, because you're trying to open a door for them that will be helpful. So it's not that we're trying to prove that something's wrong. I'm sure there's somebody out there that just needs to prove something. We've all met that person, right? And you're probably laughing right now, and the image of the person you already know just popped in your head, and you're like, yep, I know that person. So it's not like, but for the majority of us out there walking a balanced spiritual path, it's not that we want to prove that something's right. It's just that we know what we've experienced, and as a result of experiencing, our life has deepened in a beautiful way. We want that for others. But here's the thing. As a former skeptic, I can tell you that skepticism is one of two things, and kind of a combination of both of these. It is a security blanket, and it is also a timing issue. All right, let's talk about security blanket first. When I opened up, I was maybe a year into it, and I was working with my spirit guide. He was a teaching guide, and I was learning as much as I could possibly learn. And the more I learned, and the more I released some of my blocks, the more individuals I saw in spirit form. So technically, I'm considered a medium. So a lot of my intuition comes from being able to see spirits. But my boundaries weren't great. Surprise, surprise. I learned boundary setting later. But my boundaries weren't great back then. Now they're rock solid. But back then, I struggled, which meant that occasionally a spirit would come into the house at night. Maybe a spirit that needed to cross over, or maybe a spirit that just wanted to communicate about my client that I was going to see the next day. Maybe it was, for them. And this made me very uncomfortable. And I was laying in my bed one night, and I felt a spirit come into the house, and it clicked. It clicked with me. I thought, now I understand why it's uncomfortable going from skeptic to non-skeptic. Because as a skeptic, I knew that when I locked my door at night, nobody was coming in. I knew that when I locked my door at night, my house was empty. But now someone can come in if they want to, and I don't have any control over that. This was the feeling that I had. I've worked at boundaries, and I'm very good at setting my energetic space now, so that's not the case. But back then, every now and then something would happen where I felt like I didn't have control over the situation, because it was in the in-between. It wasn't in the physical world. This is where the security blanket concept comes. For a skeptic to open up, that can mean a number of things. That can mean that their security, their sense of security gets altered. Their sense of reality can shift. Their life can be dramatically affected. Oh, here's an example. I sat with a woman, and this was years and years and years ago, like 15 years ago, something like that. But I was sitting with her at a coffee shop, and she was a skeptic, and she knew that I was a medium. And we were just associates enough that we would talk once or twice a year. And she's like, I just don't believe in any of that. And she was talking about how difficult her life was at the present time. And for me, because I wanted to help so much, I started pushing spirituality on her. Like the first one's free kind of thing. Like and mind you, I've learned, right? I'm not there anymore. But I have this quirk that I want to help people so much that sometimes, yeah. So, and that's what I was doing with spirituality in that moment, because I'm thinking to myself, if she started to know that there were people with her all the time, her team, that then she wouldn't feel so alone. Like I was thinking all these things could be helpful for her. And I got pushback, rightfully so. Because who am I? Here's where my lesson came in. A couple years later, she had gotten divorced, had to end up changing jobs, moved, all this kind of stuff. And I caught up with her, and she was like, my entire life turned upside down. And I said, wow, for the better? And she goes, oh my gosh, for the better. So for the better. She's like, Bo, I opened up spiritually. But then next thing you know, like I get divorced and I have to move, and my whole world got turned upside down. It is for the better. But she said, I'm so glad that I opened up spiritually when I did, because I couldn't have handled this stuff just a couple of years ago. Now, mind you, she wasn't thinking about the coffee shop pushy Bo moment, but I was, because we hold on to that guilt, right? So I was like, ooh. And I walked away. I was super excited for her. We had a great conversation, but I walked away from that realizing that this is about timing. This is about timing. And we are not the deciders of somebody else's timing. And if I was able to convince her, which I'm not, come on, if the timing is set on your path, it's set. But if I was able to convince her a couple of years earlier, and she would open up spiritually and go through a divorce and have all these things happen as a result of it, and these are positive things. Divorce isn't always bad. If anyone's out there thinking, oh no, she went through a divorce. No, send her champagne. It was a good divorce. But if she would have gone through all those things just a little bit earlier, she felt like it would have been too much to handle. So her timing was perfect. And my thinking that I knew what was best in her timing was small. It was small. But when we do things that are small, we see it and then we grow. So here I am today, a little bit more grown about skepticism. So in essence, what skepticism is it's not pushback. It's not discounting you. It's not, I mean, some people might act like that, because they think it's cool and they just want to be bullies anyway. Those are, assholes anyway. So we just let them go. But your average, everyday, kind individual who doesn't believe there's anything out there or that there's, spirituality, there's one of two things happening for them. Their path was set before they came down. They made the decision, and either they're going to walk their entire path and never open up to spirituality, or they're going to walk their path and at some point on a predetermined timeline, they're going to open up spiritually. Both of these are perfect. Both of these are exactly what they need to be. And if you're in communication with a skeptic who is a healthy individual, they're going to look at you and say, your path is perfect. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. So we can let go of the need to convince a skeptic. We can have many experiences with a skeptic where we share an experience or we share something like today's story time. I'm going to share with you an experience I had with a skeptic that ended up just being a seed planted. where we can plant a seed. And I don't mean that in a manipulative way. I mean that in they're going to need a number of seeds planted for them to help them when their time is right to open up. So it can just be a moment of connection where they go, okay, well, that happened for that person. I don't believe it. But then in the future, if, and it's a big capital I, capital F, if they are set to open up spiritually for themselves and their experience, which 'tis not ours to control, then they will have the memory of speaking with you about it. And that will be a reinforcing memory to help them open up spiritually. So skepticism isn't bad, but it can make us feel bad, which we're going to segue into. We're going to segue into talking about relationships, because this first part I was chatting about skeptics in general. The need to prove can be from most of the time our desire to help them. But that's kind of a desire that, yeah, that's a position of like, we're right? And that's not a good position to be in. We can be in, this is my experience and this is your experience, and both of those are really great. That is the balanced place to be. And that's the healthiest for both of you. But we can also sometimes want a skeptic to believe us because we want to be heard. And that's going to be segment number two. But I do want to interject here real quick. One of my favorite teachings about this earth, because it's important that we have people who have been open their entire lives, people that open up during their life, and people that never open up. It is important to have all of those people here in all of those roles, because if we didn't have people that never opened up, then we wouldn't even have the concept of opening up now, would we? Right? And then you wouldn't have the experience of opening up. But here's one of my favorite teachings. Life is a mountain, and we are all climbing it. We're just climbing it on different paths. There is not one correct path to climb. They are all going to the same damn place. So I say that with emphasis, because if somebody's on their path and they are screaming at another person on a different path that you're on the wrong path, this is the only path, then they're ruining their own experience. They're not fully engaged in their path. They've stopped. They're yelling at other people on other paths. That's not what it's about. It's about all of us walking up our own path and cheering each other on for being on our paths. That's what it's about. Okay. All right. Step into section 2 of this, which would be talking about our intimate relationships or our close relationships. So when I say your relationship, I mean, it could be a partner, it could be a sibling, it could be a friend, it could be a parent. And when you open up intuitively, there's most of the time you'll run into someone that's close to you that doesn't believe what's happening to you is really happening. And that can be very painful. If this is happening for you, or if it's happened for you, I just want you to stick with me on this, because I want you to be heard. I also want you to have tools that you can move forward to balance the relationship. Because if you're in this relationship with this person, there's love there. There's love there. So it's worth having open communication. If you can't have open communication, it's worth just understanding that that person is only going as far as that they can go, and that you will meet them where they need to be. If you are in a partnership and you need complete open communication and that person can't meet you there, that's a decision. That's a decision that you have to process. But overall, if you approach a relationship that you're in with someone who's a skeptic and a non-believer, and now you're open intuitively and spiritually, if you love that person and you want to move forward, it's the communication that's going to work. So they're not believing you, you're having these experiences. Let me say this. When you first open up spiritually, my own experience I'm speaking from, but also how many people I've talked to about this. When you open up spiritually at first, there is a need to be heard. And this is not a bad thing, and there's no judgment around it whatsoever. But you're having these experiences, you know, the ones where you're like, holy shit, I can't make this stuff up. Like, that happened. There is a need to communicate with someone close to you to share your experience. That is natural. It's completely normal. Side note, if you do not have that, find community. Actively search out a spiritual community. If you can't find one, go to mine, Sage Circle Community. It's powerhouse of beautiful, loving people that are all walking a spiritual path. But find a community or friends, or go to your local metaphysical shop or something. Find an outlet, because it typically, in a close relationship with someone who's skeptic, it typically doesn't turn around right away. But I am going to give you some hope that it does. Now, I was married for 20 years. For the first 10, I was skeptic. I opened up right around that 10th year. And then the second half of my marriage, I was open intuitively, and I was teaching and doing sessions and working professionally. Now, at first, he was completely uncomfortable with what was happening because, like I said, security blanket. What do you mean there's a spirit in the room? That's uncomfortable. So for him, he didn't like it. His first reaction to me, actually his first reaction for a while, even though it's not really reflected so much in my book, but the deeper experience I had with him in the first couple of years was, I don't like this. This makes me uncomfortable. I need you to go find people that you can talk to about this. Just don't talk to me about it. And that was painful. That was painful because now here's a part of me that I can't share in my relationship. I'm not blaming him for that. That's where he was at. That's all he could do. But my feelings are still valid for myself, is that was painful. Couple years in, it was probably like 3 or 4 years in, he had enough spiritual experiences happening around him, because guess who's around you? Me. So he'd had enough experiences that he started to say, maybe this stuff is okay. And he also was around the situations long enough that he realized, okay, I'm okay. This is not a scary horror movie. I'm okay. So here we are. He's starting to get comfortable with it. By the end of the marriage, granted, it was an end of a marriage, I get it. But by the end of it, he had so many experiences, and I could talk about it openly, more openly, not completely openly, but more openly, that if you asked him today, is she like legit? Is this real? He would say, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So I only say that because if I can take a worst case scenario and it ends up, being that somebody can show up for me in that way and believe in me, even when I wasn't believed in initially, there's hope for most relationships. The key is to have open communication with how you're feeling about the bond between the two of you, how you feel, what you need. Not you're supposed to believe me and listen, and I have to tell. It's more, I feel alone with this. I feel discounted, and I feel like maybe in some cases you might even feel like you're maybe being called like a liar. This is a very uncomfortable time. And I feel like this is a part of myself that I can't share with you, and that makes me sad. Some sort of a conversation around that, so you can find a way to meet them in the middle, not full on, not like, hey, hey, honey, I'm home. So I did an exorcism today. Let me tell you about it. Like, I don't mean that. Okay, we're gonna let everybody tiptoe into this, but so you can share some of the experiences that you're having with them at their comfort level, so you can meet and start to grow. I have seen many people do that with great success. There are going to be situations, and this gets back to that funny, joke about holiday dinner, right? There are going to be situations where someone's closed off. They want nothing to do with it. My hope for you in that situation is that you lovingly have the right boundaries set to spend time with them in the way that works for you, right? And I also hope that that's probably not your partner. Because if it's your partner, you're going to have open conversation and you're going to move toward the middle with that person. But there are going to be individuals in your life that are just like, nope. And as long as that's not your main source of support, you're good. Let them be where they're at. Let their comfort level, let them have their security blanket. And maybe they are somebody that isn't supposed to open up. Remember. Okay. So with that said, if you have had feelings of not being seen or not being heard or not being able to share a part of yourself, those feelings are real. They're valid, and it's okay. It's okay to have those feelings. In time, your support structure will change. Find community right away that you can share these experiences with other people, and then work on establishing healthy communication and a middle ground that you can meet with this person that you love, and things will improve. Things will improve. And in time, you'll be like, I got this. That's fine. That's fine. Today, I'll go to like an event and people are like, oh, what's your name? I'll be like, oh, it's Bo. And they're like, hey, what do you do? I'm a life coach. So yeah, did you see the Westminster Dog Show? That was great. Because there's, just times I don't want to talk about spirituality all the time, but I get it. I get it. And there are spaces where you can be safe and seen and heard. And also in your relationships, there's growth that is possible. So keep that in mind if you're dealing with a skeptic. This will love everybody. This is like a love everybody. Oh, and I want to share with you today that story, this one story about a skeptic, because that story just proves, you can't push someone into believing something, no matter what you say. Okay, buckle up. It's story time. Actually, it's not a buckle up story, because I know sometimes we have stories that can be intense, but this memory I have that I'm going to share with you really coincides with what we're talking about today. We're talking about skeptics, and that little nugget where I said it doesn't matter how much you prove to them. If they want to remain a skeptic, they will. And again, no judgment on that, but here is my final moment of settling into that and knowing it's not about changing their minds. Here's the story. So I was doing readings professionally in person in an office for a number of years. I've been doing them for like 6 or 7 years. And I'm going to preface this story by saying, I'll tell you this story, and there's a couple of really strong intuitive hits that came through. This was the kind of a reading where you get done with the reading and go, wow, those were really strong hits and very accurate. But I'm prefacing it by saying not every reading is like that. And I'll tell you why. It's because Spirit is going to make sure that if something has to come through that's really proof-based, it'll come through. It's not about your ability. It's about what Spirit needs in that moment. So here we are. We're in the office, and I'm doing professional mediumship readings, and a young man and his girlfriend come in and sit down on my lovely green couch. And the young man says, well, I'm here because my mom passed. And I said, okay, don't tell me anymore. He says, well, I'm a skeptic. I need to let you know that, because, that's usually how it starts. And I said, that's okay. That's all right. And I said, oh, I do have a maternal presence in the room. She's here. I feel like she's right behind you. There were some descriptors, like she's about this tall, not very detailed, but just a little bit, right? And all of a sudden, before she started describing this young man's house, the young man said, here's the deal, lady. Yeah, he might have been in his 20s, which is the only reason I forgave him for being a little pill. But he says, here's the deal, lady. My mom passed. He didn't even say passed. He said died. My mom died, and she sent me a sign, I think, but I don't believe in this stuff. And unless you can tell me what that sign is, I'm not going to believe it. It's like, okay, well, it's not up to me. It's kind of up to your mom, but my job is to stay open and give you the information. So I look at the mom who's standing behind her son. And by the way, I'm a mother of 2 sons, so that'll come in later. And she shows a house. And I said, I think she's showing me your house. And he's like, okay. I said, there's a living room to the left and a kitchen to the right. And he's like, well, it depends on where you stand. Okay. And I said, I'm in the living room, and it looks like at the back of the living room, there's one step up. And then that step up goes to 3 bedrooms. And the girlfriend reacted. She leaned in. She was like, oh my God, that's our house. And he was like, well, yeah, but I don't have 3 bedrooms. I was like, so you only have 2? And he said, yeah. And the girlfriend, broke into the conversation and said, there's 3 rooms. One of them doesn't have a closet, and he uses it as an office. And I said, is that the middle room? She's like, oh my God, yes. So mom is giving me incredibly strong information. And again, doesn't happen every single reading you do. But in this one, this is how important it was to mom to reach her son, to say it was me. So the son's still sitting there, you know, the body language, he's got his arms crossed, he's like rolling his eyes and all this kind of stuff. And the girlfriend hits him in the arm or something and says something like, she just described your house to a T. That's, you know, and he's like, just wasn't good enough for him. He goes, well, can you even tell me what she did, what the sign was? And I said, well, now we're standing in that office that is not a bedroom according to real estate standards. And now we're in the office and I'm looking at this mom and I can feel it. And this is where being a mom of two boys came in. I could feel her mixture of hope and sadness. Like, please, kiddo, please know that I'm here. And it just made me sad. So I had to regroup for a second, because once your emotions come in to your intuitive readings, forget it. They're going to turn into mush. It's just your emotions, not somebody else's, but your emotions. Once your emotions come in, the intuition stops. So I regroup. I'm in this office. She's showing me the visual of this office. I don't see very many details there, but I see him in the office in this vision that she's showing me. And all of a sudden he's smelling something. He's smelling something. And he goes, yeah, but this is what he said to me when I told him that. He goes, yeah, but what did I smell? Okay, so let me get this right. I'm through the living room, one step up, in the middle office. It's not a bedroom, and you're smelling something. We're still here with skepticism. Okay. And the mom's now looking at me with this look on her face, like, please. And I'm in my head, I'm telling the mom in spirit, I'm doing my best. And all of a sudden I see a flower. And it's just a real generic flower, like a big, beautiful, like Hawaiian flower or something like this. And I said, well, now I'm seeing a flower. And he goes, yeah, it was the smell of a flower, but what flower? And the mom dropped her head and just stepped back. And my heart broke a little. And I have a lesson for myself in this one, so don't lose me on this yet. Stay with me. My heart broke a little. And I said to the young man, your mom is stepping back a little bit. So the information isn't coming through anymore. And he's like, well, you got to get something else. And I said, actually, and I looked at the mom for permission to end the session. And she just nodded. And I kind of knew deep down that she'll eventually get to him. He doesn't have a choice. His frontal cortex will develop. So then she'll get to him, right? He'll have his life moments that bring him around to reconnection with his mom. I knew it down deep, but I was mad in the moment. And I said, I think we're going to end this session. He's like, our time's not up. I said, your mother is standing here giving you details. All she wants is to reach you. She loves you so much. And the session is done. And he just said, fine, got up, stormed out. The girlfriend apologized on her way out. I said, you don't have to apologize. This is a difficult situation. Death is always really, really tough. And he left the room. Here's the lesson for me. I can be protective, dare I say, overprotective of others. It's just it's how I'm wired. I don't know. It's my nature. And sometimes that comes out first. But when I sat with it, feeling that feeling of protectiveness toward this mother, or the desire for her to be able to reach her boy, I realized it's not my place. It's not my place to make this young man believe his mom is there. My place, my role in that moment was to be one more seed planted for the day that he was ready. So I had to take my judgment, like look it square in the eyes and be like, UGLY. I ain't got no alibi. It's ugly. So my judgment was ugly. I let it go. I didn't communicate with him again. And I settled into the knowledge that what happened in that office was exactly what happened. And what I was reading from the mom, I would say, if I had to really examine what happened for me, I would say what I was reading from the mom, the emotions I was reading from her, was her desire to connect with him and her effort that she's putting in. And I may have translated some of that as sadness. Because here's the thing. Spirit knows everything that's happened in the past and everything that's going to happen in the future. So that mama knew that she would eventually reach her boy. So I might have felt that a little bit on my own. So this is one of those readings where it happens. It happens. When it hits close to home, you have to check yourself, reset, and do your best job that you can in the moment. And afterwards, see if you've got something to learn about it. if you've listened to a couple of the podcast episodes, you may have noticed that I don't have any advertising in them. And I do this on purpose because my reason for being here with you is to talk about your intuition, to bring it into your day-to-day life, because everyone is intuitive. Everyone is intuitive. I've been teaching people how to hone their intuition, how to access their already natural, strong intuition for well over 15 years all over the globe. It is my calling. It's my job to remind you of how incredible you are, how intuitive you are, and say, here's how you open up that intuitive channel of yours that is already super strong. I've been teaching this through a course called the Sage Method. So you might hear me reference it. It's a 7-week development course. And that, along with free tools and a whole bunch of other really great stuff, I keep it all in one place. It's at thesagemethod.com. So go over there, see what you're pulled to, and start honing your intuition. Okay, time to talk to Peter. All right, Peter is my guide. Little one is my dog. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can probably see her. She loves talking to Peter. And she hangs out with me a lot. Peter's my guide. I've been working with him for well over 15 years, something like that. It's been so long. At some point, it just is, right? And Peter loves to talk about the energies in the world, but how they affect you. So he talks about energies kind of on a parallel effect. Here's the big movement of energy coming in. This is where we're all headed. What does that mean for you yourself individually? And he shares a lot of this information in the Sacred Space sessions in the Sage Circle, every new moon and full moon. But we started doing these little segments, right, to give everybody kind of a leg up. Here we go. I'm going to sit quietly for a minute and connect with him, see what he has to say, and then I will do my job by telling you what I see, feel, and hear. All right, here we go. Okay, I did speak with him earlier, and he was talking about preparing yourself for the new year. But what's coming through isn't information like write your affirmations or plan what you want to do or what you want to be. Instead, he's talking about the end of the year being an invitation for you to, I'm trying to find the right word. Here's the visual, because I can't find the right word for it. So here's the visual. He shows you walking through a town, and it's symbolic that you're just walking through. It's your town. It's the town you live in, and it's symbolic. So it's a metaphor. And I see you go to walk to a store that you normally walk to, and an imaginary wall comes up and you hit the wall and you can't go forward. And it's like, okay, well, why can't, and you can't see the wall and it's blocking you from going forward. And you're like, well, now I've been heading into town here for a really long time. I've arrived in town and this is what I came to do. And the wall comes up and blocks you. He's asking for you to step back and look at all the possible options as to why you have developed the way you developed this year. Meaning, you started out this year saying, that's it, I've had enough. I'm not going to function the way that I'm told to function or programmed to function. And this is the year where I'm going to live, I'm going to be me. I'm going to live authentically. I'm going to do the things that I love, right? Huge influx of that energy this year. We're talking big time, like family scruffles have happened over this stuff this year. And I want to be myself. Yes, 100%. He's saying that at the end of the year, while you've been going, well, all of us have been going toward one particular goal for ourselves individually, we've gotten to a point where we've reached that end moment, and it's not what we thought it was going to be. And he puts his finger on his nose. For me, when a spirit puts their finger on their nose, it's like, you said it right, Bo. You said it right. So it's not going to be what it's supposed to be. This is actually good news, not bad news. And your task to prepare for 2026 is to think of or start to expand your mind around the possibilities that could be, that might not be the one that you thought, but might be different. right? So for example, if you wanted to go back to school next year, something like this, and you thought you knew what you wanted to go back to school for, he's asking you to sit down and look around. Have there been signs leading you in a different direction? And have you felt like a different direction is a bad thing? You need to reconsider that different direction. You need to reconsider it, because that might have actually been the correct direction. I'm asking him for a couple more examples, because examples are always so helpful. Always so helpful. Okay, so perhaps you wanted to move, right, where you live, and you thought the best option was this type of a house structure, right, or in this neighborhood, and you've been working on getting there through this whole time. And then all of a sudden you start hitting walls, because you're going to hit walls this month, right around the middle of like now. You're going to start hitting walls where you're like, this was the goal. I was heading in this direction. Back to the metaphor. I was walking to the town, to the goal, and I got to it, and it just stopped. Well, you were supposed to get to that town to take a right so you could actually get to the next town, and that next town is going to be better than the one. So back to, let's say you wanted to move to a particular place. That's what we're talking about. And everything was going in that direction. And then all of a sudden the sign started to point a little off to the side. Maybe you should go over here instead, right? That's what you need to listen to. That's the preparation. The preparation for 2026 is, in addition to, yes, writing your affirmations, writing what you want to do, the things that you want to bring into your life, absolutely 100%. But please add into that the purposeful focus of opening up to multiple possibilities of why you have expanded your spirit this year, why you have opened your intuition this year, why you have learned more about yourself and gotten closer to being your authentic self. There is a why in there that is lingering but not clear yet. It will be clear hopefully by the end of the year for you, maybe the beginning of the year. But your task to prepare for the new year is to stay open to more possibilities. Because I don't know if y'all like me, right? But if I get my mind set on something, that's what I'm doing. That's where I'm going. And it takes like a Mack truck to move me, 2 steps to the right to where it's a better path. And that's in essence what's happening. The way that I am feeling this energy, and like an example that I would say, another metaphor would probably be, there's been the fishing line in front of you with the bait, and you decided what that bait was. You decided what you wanted, and you've been following that bait. You've been following the fishing line. And now in December, that line's going to yank right out of the water, and that bait's, not there. And you're like, wait a minute, my heart was set on this direction. My heart was set on what I wanted to do. And new bait comes in, and now this is not even bait. This is just free food. And it's like way better than you thought. It's also similar. Let's keep in mind here. So like the example of moving somewhere, you're still moving somewhere. There's just one piece you haven't picked up yet. There's just one sign you haven't paid attention to yet. And that's going to change the trajectory just slightly, right? Or in a relationship. Let's say you're, moving toward a relationship and you have your idea set on what that looks like. It's going to look very similar, and it's still going to happen, but it's going to be slightly different. So your task, if you so choose to accept, to prepare for the new year, and it's important that he's giving it to us now, right? Because the new year's coming soon. Your task is to create a mantra or write a message to post on your bathroom mirror or something like this that is in the essence of possibilities are unlimited as I move toward my bliss. You're still moving toward it. It's still going to work out kind of the way you think it is. But by being in that space of knowing that you need to stay open to different outcomes, the best one will land, if that makes sense. So your job's not to figure out the best one. That's hard, isn't it? Your job's not to figure out the best one. Your job is to say, I'm open to multiple opportunities, multiple outcomes, and I know the best one's going to come. So stay in that mind space of multiple possibilities. Okay, let's see if there's anything else coming through. I kind of felt like that was a bit of a wrap. He said it was. Bum, bum, bum. He just showed 2026, and he showed you like just laughing with expression. And it looked wonderful. I can always tell when he's wrapping up because my dog just kind of like pulls back off my lap and settles in like, okay, it's done. It's nap time. It's nap time. Okay, you've got your task. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is brought to you by the SAGE Method, the most comprehensive and down-to-earth intuitive development training available. Is this your year? Is it finally your time to increase your intuition, bring in more abundance, and experience the bliss you deserve? If yes, then join thousands of students across the world for a 7-week journey to uncover your natural, beautiful, and strong intuition. Visit us at thesagemethod.com for more information.